Hey guys, it's Casera, and today I'm going to be doing my August TBR. I'm super excited for this August TBR. As you guys know, I have reading goals of reading at least one classic, one sci-fi, one historical fiction, one thriller, and one book over 700 pages every month. So I'm gonna start out with those reading goals and which books that I plan to read for each of those. So for my classic for the month of August, I'm planning on reading Cat's Cradle by Vonnegut. I've never read any Vonnegut books before, and I've heard this is a really great one to start with. And I've always wanted to read his works because I've heard really great things about them, but I don't know very much about them. I know his books tend to be about war and deal with themes like that. So I'm really interested in seeing how this one goes because I've heard this one is really, really good. So I'm definitely really excited for this one. For my sci-fi book for this month, I plan on reading Persepolis Rising by James S.A. Corey. This is the 7th book in the Expanse series. I'm almost done with this series, guys. Like, the next book is the last one that's out, and then next year the final book in this series is coming out. So I'm pretty excited for it. I'm hoping this one is really good. I'm really, really hoping this one is really good. So I'm definitely excited for this one. My library doesn't have the audiobook for this one, so I'm gonna actually have to read this one physically. It's fine. I will definitely get to it, and I'm definitely excited for it too. For my historical fiction book this month, I'm planning on reading Salt of the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. This is a book that's actually really popular on BookTube, which is why I ended up picking it up. And I've had it on my shelf for a really long time. I've been meaning to read it, and I didn't have another historical fiction this month, so I was like, you know what, let me try this one and see how it goes. So I don't know very much about this one. I know it's about World War II, and I know it's a YA book, which I don't read a whole lot of YA historical fiction. So I'm actually pretty excited to get into it because I feel like it could be potentially a quick read, but at the same time, historical fiction tends to have like darker aspects to it that I'm definitely excited for. For my thriller novel this month, I'm planning on reading Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. So this is the 3rd book that she's written. I've read her other 2 books, and I really, really liked Gone Girl, which is like her most famous work, and I didn't like Sharp Objects as much, but I do like the character development that Gillian Flynn puts into her thrillers, because a lot of time I feel like with thriller novels, they're just going for shock factor and they're not actually trying to like actually do character development, and I like that about her. So that's why I ended up picking up this book, just because I knew she had some good character development and I wanted to read more books by her. So I'm definitely excited to finally get to this one this month as well. For my 700+ page novel, I'm definitely planning on reading The Lies of Lamora by Lynch. I'm so excited for this. I'm so ready to finally start the Gentleman Bastard series. I've heard so many fantastic things about this series, especially the way the second half of this first book is structured. So I'm super excited for it. For those of you who don't know, this is a high fantasy series that is kind of centered around thieves. So it's not really like the heroes going into it, but they're not like terrible people either. They're like not murderers or anything like that. They've just had a hard life, and I'm definitely excited for it. I have started this book in the past, so like I've read like the first chapter before and I really enjoyed it. So I'm definitely excited to finally get into this series. So for the rest of the books that I plan to read this month, a lot of these books are going to be from my book buying ban challenge. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up there, but I'm really ready for it to be over because there's so many new releases coming out soon towards the end of the year. I actually did a video on that as well, and I'm super excited to get some of those. So in order to be able to buy some of those, I'm gonna have to be off that challenge. So I'm planning to try and finish this challenge before November, hopefully. We'll see how that goes. But before we get to most of those, I do have a couple of other books that I definitely really hope to get to in the month of August. The first one is The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding. I've decided to pick up this book because a lot of people have asked me to read this book. I've had multiple comments over like the last 6 months or so telling me that I would really like this book. So it's like one of the first recommendations that I'm getting from my comment section. So I'm definitely excited to pick it up. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm definitely excited for it because I don't really know anything about this book other than it has really great character building and it's a high fantasy book. That's really all I know about it, but I'm definitely excited for it. The next book that I'm planning on picking up is The Blood Mirror by Brent. This is the 4th book in the Lightbringer series. Last month I read The Broken Eye, which is the 3rd book in the Lightbringer series. I did really enjoy it, and I'm definitely excited to continue on with the series. For those of you who don't know, I absolutely love this series. It's very fast paced. It has unlikable characters, but in a way that I like them. if that makes sense. They're very complex, very politically complex in this series as well. And I love the magic system. I think the magic system and the writing style is what really makes the series for me. Love the magic system. It's based on color, in case you're wondering. That's why it's called the Lightbringer series. And the writing and just how well paced this series is, I absolutely love that aspect of it. So definitely really enjoyed the series and excited to continue on. The next book that I plan on reading this month is City of Dragons by Robin Hobb. I've made a lot of progress on the Realm of the Elderlings, because if you guys have been following my TBRs, last month my TBR was For Golden Fool, was the Realm of the Elderlings book on my TBR. That is like 4 books before this one, so in last month, I read like 4 books from the Realm of the Elderlings. So yeah, definitely made a lot of progress on it. I'm definitely really excited to continue on with it. I love the Rainwall Chronicles so far. It's not my favorite of her series within the Realm of the Elderlings, but it's still a really good one. This one is the 3rd book in the Rainwall Chronicles, which is kind of the follow-up to the Last Ship Traders trilogy, but it occurs after the Tawny Men trilogy. I know, it's convoluted. Maybe when I finish the entire series, I'll just do a video on the Realm of the Elderlings and exactly what order you should read them and all of those sort of things, because I'm really excited for this one, because I did really enjoy the last book in this series so far, which is Dragon Haven. I just finished it. Did really enjoy it, and definitely excited to move on to City of Dragons. The next book that I plan on reading in the month of August is An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. I'm actually really excited for this one. I've heard a lot of really good things about this one, and I've also heard this one compared to The Night Circus a lot, which I actually really love The Night Circus, so I'm definitely excited for this, because this is kind of a standalone fantasy, and you don't really get a lot of books like this. It's one of those like more of a soft magic fantasy, but there's magicians involved and there's a competition, and I'm just excited for it to be magical and mysterious and all of that good stuff. So I'm definitely excited to read this, and I've heard it has a really good plot too. So I'm pretty excited for this one. The next book that I'm planning on reading is The Last Wish by Andrej Sapkowski. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I think that's wrong. Maybe. Anyways, this is the first book in the Witchers series. This is actually a series of short stories, which I've heard you should read before you get into the rest of the books in the series. It's the only book in the series that I actually have. I've heard really great things about the Witcher series. It's a really great grimdark fantasy that's pretty hyped on BookTube, and I'm definitely excited to get into it. I had never heard about the series before BookTube, and I read a lot of fantasy before I found BookTube, especially adult fantasy, so I don't know how I never heard about the series, but I'm definitely excited for it, and I want to see if I'll like it, because a lot of people really love this series, and I want to really love it also. The next book that I plan on reading in the month of August is The Tiger's Daughter by K. Arsenault Rivera. I haven't heard too much about this book other than like people putting it on their TBRs. It's an Asian-inspired fantasy series, and the last one that I've read that's an Asian-inspired fantasy series was The Poppy War, which I really enjoyed. So I'm hoping that I'll enjoy this one as much. Poppy War obviously was a lot more hyped than The Tiger's Daughter was, but the next book in the series is already out, I think. So I'm definitely excited to finally get into this one, and hopefully I'll end up really liking it. The next book I'm planning on reading is Everybody Sees the Ants by A.S. King. A.S. King is a contemporary YA author. I think contemporary. I know this one's a contemporary book, but she's a YA author that is actually really beloved on BookTube, but I've never read any of her books, but I've heard this one is really good. I don't know anything about it, like absolutely nothing about it, but I've heard this one is really good, so I decided to pick it up because I really want to read more authors, and A.S. King was one of them that just jumped out at me that I should try some of her books, so that's why I picked this one up, and I'm definitely excited to get to it. The next book that I'm planning on reading is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Last month I read Six of Crows. Really enjoyed it, and super excited to move on with Crooked Kingdom. You guys know what this book is about. I absolutely love these characters, and I'm definitely excited to see where the plot finally gets to. So yes, super excited for this one. The next book that I'm planning to read in the month of August is The Last Namsara by Kristen Ciccarelli. So in my last month, I did a try a chapter book tag, and I picked 2 of the books. This was the 3rd book that I wanted to pick, but didn't get around to picking just because I didn't have time to read that many books. So I'm finally gonna get to it this month. I'm pretty excited for it because the first chapter starts off with a bang, like really good. So this one is about dragon slayers, and that's really all I know about it. But at the same time, like, I'm pretty interested in it. It's also a YA high fantasy, and I always try to read at least one of these every month, and I'm pretty excited for this one, so we'll see how it goes. Last but not least, I'm planning on reading The Invasion of the Tearling by Erika Johannson. This is probably a surprise to you guys because I didn't put The Queen of the Tearling, which is the first book in this series, on my TBR for last month, but I did end up reading it. I just picked it up completely off of a whim, and I ended up really enjoying it. I didn't really expect to like it, but I ended up really liking it, so I'm definitely excited to move on with the series. In the first book, the princess has been in hiding for a very long time, and the kingdom is being run by her uncle, the regent, and a lot of things are happening that's really not very good for the people. So she comes into power and she basically ends up declaring war on their neighbors, like right away. Not really meaning to, she's like doing what's right for her people, but at the same time, her neighbors are a lot more powerful than her, so they're gonna get invaded, obviously, as the name implies, and I'm definitely excited for it. I'm really excited for this one, actually, because I like the first book in the series a lot more than I was expecting. The main character in here, Kelsey, I actually really like. I just get really into some of her scenes because this is a very political driven fantasy, and I love politically driven fantasy, and a lot of YA fantasy generally don't have as much politics, and this one definitely does, and I love that about it. Okay, so before we go, I am gonna do a poll in this month's TBR just like I did in the last 2 months' TBRs. I really enjoyed doing the poll, and I'm going to reveal the winner of the last poll right now. For those of you who didn't see the poll last time, I decided that you guys can choose which book that I'm going to reread, and the winner of that poll ended up being The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I'm super excited to reread this one, so I'll be doing a full review on this one coming out in the next couple of weeks or so, and I'm definitely really excited to reread it. So my new poll for this month, which the winner will be revealed at next month's TBR, is going to be giving a series a second chance. So I've picked 5 really popular series. I've read the first book or the first couple of books in this series, and I haven't continued on with it. Some of these series I still planned to continue on with it eventually, but I didn't continue on with it immediately. And some of these I was just kind of like, nope, never gonna happen, never gonna continue on with it. But you guys can make me continue on with it with this poll if you really want me to read these series. So the first one is going to be the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I've read Throne of Glass like 3 or 4 years ago. I went into it with an open mind because for years I had been looking at this book on Amazon going, you know, I really don't think I'm gonna like this book. I really don't think I'm gonna like this book. And then I read this interview that Sarah J. Maas did about why she wrote the book and how she came up with it and all of that. And I was like, you know what? That's a really great story. And I wanna give her a chance. Like, I wanna give it a try. So I bought the first 2 books on Kindle edition because they were doing a sale at the time. And I read the first book and I was just completely floored because I didn't understand why this book was so popular. Like, I did not understand it. I hated all of the characters. I hated the romantic tension. I liked the world, but I don't think there was that much in it. Like, I don't think there was enough detail to really give us a picture of what the world was. And I just felt like the actual plot of the book was very tied to the romance, which I really didn't like. And the like action plot of the book, I didn't really care for. Like, I didn't have any emotional attachments to it. But so many people liked it that I decided to pick up the second book, and I read like the first chapter of the second book and just completely DNF'd it immediately. That was my entire experience with Throne of Glass, which is very little, and I feel like a couple of years ago, back then I was in a reading slump, and pretty much everything I read at the time I really didn't enjoy very much, so I probably didn't give the Throne of Glass series as much of a try as I normally would. So I kind of want to give it a second chance. And so if I do decide to do this one, I will be moving on and finally actually reading Crown of Midnight, which is the second book in this series. And hopefully I'll end up liking it because I do like the Court of Thorns and Roses series, which is Sarah J. Maas's other series. And I really didn't like the first book, but A Court of Mist and Fury, the second book, actually made me really like the series. So I'm hoping that maybe Crown of Midnight can do the same thing for me with the Throne of Glass series. If you want, you can vote for Crown of Midnight. The next series on this poll is going to be A Darker Shade of Magic series by V.E. Schwab. This is actually the first book that I read because of BookTube. Like, when I first found BookTube, this is the first book that I was just like, you know what? I'm going to buy a book because of BookTube and see if I like it, and this is the book that I ended up picking. It was one of those books I was really hyped on BookTube, but at the same time, it was the type of book, it was marketed in the way that I would want to be marketed to, because it's an adult fantasy, it has an elemental magic system, and it has multiple worlds, which are all of like some of my favorite tropes. I love adult fantasy. It's like my comfort zone when it comes to reading. I love elemental magic systems, and I love multiple worlds, and I never get a good multiple worlds book. Like, I've always wanted to read a good multiple worlds book, and I just don't get it. So I was really excited for this, and it just let me down so much. First of all, don't think it's an adult fantasy. Definitely, it reads like a YA fantasy. At best, it could be a new adult fantasy, but it doesn't feel like an adult fantasy at all. Like, I was expecting, you know, Mistborn, Game of Thrones, Wheel of Time style, like, adult fantasy, and this is just not that. It is nowhere near that. So, I feel like this may have been a good book, but I just had expectations of it that it just didn't live up to. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. That was back when I was a lot nicer in my ratings. I feel like if I felt the same way about this book now as I did back then, I would end up giving it like a 1.5 to 2 stars, which is not that good. But I still remember this book a lot, and I still remember like where it left off. So I would definitely be open to reading A Gathering of Shadows, I think it is, which is the second book in this series. So if you guys want me to give this series a second chance, because there's no way I'm going to continue on with the series unless you guys vote for it, then you can vote for A Gathering of Shadows, which is the second book in the series. I don't have a copy of that one. But so the next series on this poll is the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. I read this book last year, and this is another one that I had similar feelings as A Darker Shade of Magic with it, because this is an adult series, and I wouldn't say this is a YA series, but it doesn't feel like an adult series to me in the way that I expect it to. It feels a little, I would consider this one more new adult also. But when I read this series, I was getting a lot of Hunger Games vibes to it. The Hunger Games has a lot of emotional attachments to it that I got out of the first book that I just wasn't getting out of this book. And I think part of it was the main character, Darrow. I just absolutely hated him. I hated him so much that I just couldn't read from his point of view after a while. Like, I feel like the writing, Pierce Brown's writing is really good. I love the plot. There's some really great plot twists in here. And like, it's a very interesting world, but I hated the main character so much that I had such a hard time continuing on with it. So if you guys vote for this, I will continue on with Golden Sun and read it. Hopefully I'll like the main character more in that one than I did in this one. Because, I mean, character development, things happen, right? Characters get better or possibly worse. But, so yes. So you can definitely vote for this series if you like this one. And I will continue on with Golden Sun. The next series on this list is the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. This is the 3rd book in the series. I've read the first 2 books. So when I picked up this series, I actually enjoyed it. Red Queen, I really enjoyed. I ended up giving that one 4 stars. I thought it was a really great amalgamation of like different tropes, and I thought it was an interesting world. So I was excited to see where it was going, but I was really bored by Glass Sword. Like, Glass Sword, the 2nd book in the series, I ended up giving it 2 stars. I was just really bored by it, and because of that, I haven't continued on with the series. But if you guys want me to continue on with the series, I would definitely be open to reading King's Cage, which is the 3rd book in the series. I have all 4 books in the series, so I've been meaning to get to them, but because Glass Sword was so boring to me, I just haven't been feeling to pick up King's Cage. But if you guys want me to, I totally will if you vote for it in this poll. And the last series that I'm going to be putting on this list is the Nevernight Chronicle by J. Kristoff. This one I actually do plan on still continuing on with it. This one was a recent read. I read Nevernight a couple of months ago. Like, you guys probably saw my wrap up with Nevernight in it, and I did enjoy it. Like, I understand why people really like it. I ended up giving that one 3.5 stars, but it just wasn't quite what I wanted it to be, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't like the character of Mia Corvera as much as I wanted to. I didn't have the emotional attachments to some of the things that happened towards the end as much as I wanted to, which I felt like could have been really good if you were attached to those characters, and I just wasn't. I do really like this world, and I want to see more of this world, which is why I do plan to still continue on with Godsgrave eventually. I didn't quite like it as much as I wanted to like the first book, so that's why I just haven't continued on with the series yet. But if you guys want me to, you could definitely vote for Godsgrave, and I'll continue on with this month. And if you want to give me a give me, because all the rest of them, I really hadn't planned on continuing on with those series at all. So if you want to give me a gimme also, you can vote for Godsgrave so that I can continue on with one that I actually kind of did want to continue on with. So those are all the books in the polls. I'll put the poll up in the corner for you guys if you guys want to vote on that poll. If you've read any of these books or if you liked any of these books, please let me know down in the comments because I would love to discuss with you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I post videos at least weekly, so consider subscribing. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up to support my channel. All social media links are in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.